The Artemis hung in high orbit above Zixria Prime, its sleek hull reflecting the purple-tinged light of the binary star system. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the bridge viewport, her dark eyes studying the crystalline cities that dotted the alien world's surface. After 15 years of deep space exploration, humanity had finally found another spacefaring civilization, but first contact protocols hadn't prepared her for what awaited below. "Captain," her XO called out, "the Zixrian High Council is ready to receive you." Sarah straightened her midnight blue uniform, checking its crisp lines in the reflection. "Time to make history, Marcus. Keep the ship ready. You know the protocols." The descent through the atmosphere was smooth, the shuttle's advanced dampeners handling the turbulence with ease. As they broke through the cloud layer, Sarah caught her first glimpse of the Grand Reception Plaza, a massive platform of what appeared to be living crystal, shifting colors rippling through its structure with each passing moment. What the briefings hadn't mentioned was the sheer scale of Zixrian architecture. Everything was built to accommodate beings that typically stood 3 meters tall, making Sarah feel like she had wandered into a world of giants. The landing pad alone could have housed her entire shuttle fleet. The airlock cycled, and Sarah stepped out into air that smelled of ozone and something sweeter, like cinnamon, but not quite. Her diplomatic training kicked in as she spotted the welcoming delegation, but all her preparations stuttered to a halt when she saw them. The Zixri twins stood at the forefront of the group, identical in their otherworldly beauty. Both stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted between deep purple and electric blue. But where one wore flowing robes of silver that seemed to dance in the wind, the other was clad in form-fitting armor that appeared to be made from the same living crystal as the buildings. "Welcome, Captain Chen of Earth," they spoke in perfect unison, their voices creating harmonics that made Sarah's skin tingle. "I am Valera," said the one in robes, "and I am Celara," added her armored twin. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, I bring greetings," Sarah responded, falling back on her training. "We look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our peoples." Valera glided forward, her movement almost hypnotic. "Such formality," she purred, her voice like liquid silk. "But necessary, I suppose, for first meetings." Celara stalked around Sarah in a circle, her predatory grace a stark contrast to her sister's ethereal movement. "Tell me, Captain, how do humans handle complexity?" "We adapt," Sarah answered, keeping her voice steady as she tracked both twins' movements. "It's one of our species' defining traits." "Interesting," the twins said simultaneously, sharing a look that made Sarah's diplomatic instincts fire warning signals. Then perhaps, Valra continued, "you would be interested in a rather unique opportunity. One that could determine the future of relations between our species," Salva added, completing her circle to stand beside her sister. Sarah felt the weight of history on her shoulders, knowing her next words could shape humanity's first interstellar alliance. "I'm listening." The twins smiled in unison, their iridescent eyes gleaming with an intelligence that seemed almost predatory. "Humans pride themselves on their ability to multitask, yes?" Valra asked. "To handle complex situations with," Selra paused, "multiple moving parts." "We do," Sarah confirmed, her curiosity piqued despite her caution. "Then we have a challenge for you, Captain Chen of Earth." They spoke together, their harmonized voices sending shivers down Sarah's spine. "One that no other species has yet passed." As the twin suns set behind the crystal spires of the city, casting rainbow refractions across the plaza, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to step into something far more complex than a simple diplomatic mission. The twins' gazes held secrets, their matching smiles promising both opportunity and danger. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a test that would push the limits of human adaptation and prove whether humanity truly deserved a place among the stars. The challenge. The Zixrian High Council chamber dwarfed any room Sarah had ever seen on Earth. Crystalline pillars stretched hundreds of meters overhead, their surfaces alive with pulsing light that cast ever-changing shadows across the gathered assembly. Representatives from a dozen alien species filled the tiered seats, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of intelligent life in the galaxy. Valera and Selra led Sarah to the center of the chamber, where a circular platform rose from the floor. "The challenge we offer," Valera began, her voice echoing through the vast space, "is one of synchronicity." "Of duality," Selra added, activating a holographic display that sprang to life between them. Two complex control interfaces materialized, floating in the air. "Our species," Valera explained, gesturing to the assembled aliens, "each tried and failed to master these controls simultaneously." Selra's armor shifted, reflecting the holographic light. "One requires precise diplomatic negotiations through neural interface. The other," Valera continued, "demands split-second tactical decisions in a simulated crisis. Both must be managed perfectly," they spoke in unison, "or both will fail." Sarah studied the interfaces, her mind racing. "And what exactly are we negotiating for?" The twins shared another of their enigmatic smiles. "Everything," Valera said softly. "Access to our technology," Selra elaborated. "Trade routes through our space." "Alliance with the Zixrian Empire," Valera finished. A murmur rippled through the assembled aliens. Sarah caught fragments of translated conversations, discussions of previous failures, speculation about human capabilities, and not a few wagers being placed on her imminent failure. "And if I fail?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Then humanity will be deemed," Valera paused. "Unready," Selra completed, her tone carrying a hint of threat. Sarah approached the control interfaces, studying their complex arrangements. The diplomatic console swirled with abstract patterns that seemed to shift under her gaze, while the tactical display showed what appeared to be a three-dimensional battlefield with multiple theaters of operation. "How long do I have to prepare?" "3 planetary rotations," the twins answered together. "And how many attempts do I get?" "1. Their harmonized voices left no room for negotiation. Sarah felt the weight of humanity's future settling onto her shoulders. Success would open the gateway to advanced technology and protection from whatever threats lurked in the darkness between stars. Failure would leave Earth isolated, vulnerable. "I accept," she said firmly, drawing surprised whispers from the gallery. "Most species took days to decide," Selra observed. "Only to fail nonetheless," Valera added. "Then they weren't human," Sarah replied, squaring her shoulders. "We have a saying on Earth, pressure makes diamonds." The twins' eyes gleamed with interest. "Speaking of pressure," Valera said, waving her hand. A new hologram appeared, showing a massive fleet of ships approaching Zixrian space. "The Kreshkar Dominion approaches our borders," Seldra explained. "They seek to test our defenses. Your challenge," Valra continued, "will coincide with their arrival." "So this isn't just a test," Sarah realized, her mind connecting the dots. "You actually need someone who can handle both diplomatic negotiations and tactical operations simultaneously." "Clever human," the twins spoke together, their voices carrying both approval and warning. Sarah returned to her shuttle that evening, her mind racing with possibilities. She had 3 days to prepare for a challenge that would test the very limits of human cognitive ability. As she watched the alien city's lights twinkle below, she opened a secure channel to her ship. "Marcus, I need you to dig up everything we have on dual task processing and neural interface training, and get me Dr. Zhang from xenopsychology." "That bad?" her XO asked. "That important," Sarah corrected, her eyes fixed on the horizon where 2 suns were setting in perfect synchronization. "We're about to prove why humanity deserves a seat at the galactic table." In her quarters aboard the Artemis, Sarah spent the night reviewing the collected data on Zixrian technology and culture. One detail kept drawing her attention. Their species evolved from creatures that had to process information from 2 brains simultaneously. The twins weren't just testing her, They were testing whether humans could match their natural abilities. As she finally drifted off to sleep, the twin suns of Zixria Prime painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, a reminder of the duality that seemed to define this world. Tomorrow, her training would begin, and with it, humanity's chance to prove itself worthy of the stars. Training days. Dawn broke over the crystal spires of Zixria Prime, but Sarah had already been awake for hours. In the specialized training chamber provided by the twins, she sat cross-legged before the dual interfaces, her mind racing through the patterns that Dr. Zhang had helped her develop. "Your species relies too heavily on sequential processing," Valra observed, circling Sarah like a shimming ghost in her flowing robes. "You think linearly," Sarah added from the shadows, her armor absorbing the morning light. "It makes you predictable." Sarah kept her eyes closed, focusing on the neural feedback from both interfaces simultaneously. "Then maybe it's time to show you something unpredictable." The diplomatic simulation sprang to life in her mind, a complex negotiation with a species that communicated through color patterns and electromagnetic pulses. Simultaneously, the tactical display showed 3 separate battle groups approaching from different vectors. "Interesting approach," Valra murmured as Sarah's hands moved across both interfaces, using Earth's historical naval warfare tactics in space. While conducting trade negotiations in wavelengths, Sarah noted genuine surprise in her voice. "Perhaps humans aren't as linear as we thought." Sarah didn't respond, her concentration absolute. She had discovered something during her night of research. The Zixri twins weren't just testing her ability to multitask. They were testing humanity's capacity for evolutionary adaptation. The simulation ramped up in complexity. In the diplomatic channel, the alien representatives began demanding immediate responses to multiple proposals, each coded in shifting patterns of light and energy. In the tactical display, the enemy fleet split into smaller groups, executing unpredictable maneuvers. Sweat beaded on Sarah's forehead as she maintained her focus. Dr. Zhang's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't try to think of them as separate tasks. Let them flow together, like 2 streams joining into a river." A breakthrough came in the 6th hour of training. Sarah stopped trying to handle the diplomatic and tactical challenges as distinct problems. Instead, she began to see patterns, how the rhythm of the diplomatic exchanges matched the flow of battle, how the pressure points in negotiations mirrored strategic weaknesses in fleet positions. "She's beginning to understand," Valra whispered to her sister. "But will it be enough?" Selra responded, watching Sarah's fingers dance across the interfaces. The second day brought new challenges. The twins introduced temporal variations. The diplomatic track would speed up while the tactical slowed down, then reverse without warning. Sarah adapted, drawing on techniques used by Earth's air traffic controllers and emergency response coordinators. "Tell me," Valra asked during a brief rest period, "how does your species handle information overload?" Sarah took a sip of the iridescent liquid the twins had provided, something between coffee and liquid electricity. "We innovate, adapt, find new ways to process and understand. And when those ways fail," Sarah pressed. "We create new ones," Sarah replied, her eyes already back on the interfaces. "It's what we do." The third day dawned with an unexpected development. The real Kreshkar fleet had accelerated its approach. What was supposed to be a simulated crisis was rapidly becoming a real one. "Perhaps we should postpone the challenge," Valra suggested, watching the tactical displays with concern. "No," Sarah said firmly, taking her position before the interfaces. "This is exactly what the test is about, isn't it? Handling real situations, not just simulations." The twins exchanged a look that Sarah had learned to recognize, surprise mixed with growing respect. "Very well," they spoke in unison. "But understand this. Failure now means more than just humanity's status in the galaxy. The Kreshkar will interpret any weakness as an invitation to attack." Sarah felt the weight of the moment, but something else was crystallizing in her mind. an understanding of why the twins had chosen this particular test. The Zixtri weren't just looking for allies who could handle complexity. They were looking for species who could help them protect their borders, their way of life. "One question before we begin," Sarah said, her fingers hovering over the interfaces. "The dual nature of your species. It's not just about processing information, is it? It's about balance. Diplomacy and strength. Peace and war. That's what you're really testing." The twins' iridescent eyes widened slightly, and Sarah knew she had hit upon something fundamental to their culture. "Perhaps," Valra said softly, "humans understand more than we anticipated." "Let's see if that understanding translates to action," Sarah added, activating the interfaces for what would be Sarah's final practice session before the real test. As the neural links engaged and the displays came to life, Sarah felt a calm certainty settle over her. Tomorrow would bring the real challenge: simultaneous diplomatic negotiations with the Kreshkar while coordinating defense forces against their fleet. But today, she would perfect the dance between peace and war, between words and actions. The fate of two civilizations would rest on her ability to prove that humanity could not only handle duality, but thrive in it. Rising tensions. The Kreshkar fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic insects, their ships' crystalline hulls reflecting the light of Zixria's twin suns. Sarah stood in the High Council chamber, the neural interfaces humming to life as she took her position. "Their commander demands immediate audience," Valra announced, her usual graceful movements tight with tension. "While their fleet moves into attack formation," Sarah added, monitoring the tactical displays. "Classic Kreshkar tactics, speak of peace while preparing for war." Sarah rolled her shoulders, feeling the weight of the moment. "Then let's give them something they've never seen before." The diplomatic channel burst into life, revealing the Kreshkar commander, a being that seemed to be composed of shifting geometric patterns held together by fields of energy. "You permit a lesser species to speak for you." The commander's translated voice crackled with disdain. "I speak with the full authority of both Earth and Zixria," Sarah responded, her hands moving across both interfaces. As she spoke, she was simultaneously directing defensive fleet movements, positioning ships in what appeared to be standard protection patterns. "Your species is unknown to us," the commander said. "Your authority means nothing." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Then perhaps it's time for a proper introduction. In the tactical display, she had been quietly splitting the Zixtrian defense fleet into smaller units, using the larger formations as cover. It was a technique borrowed from Earth's ancient naval strategies, specifically the tactics of Admiral Yi Sun-sin, who had used similar deceptions to defeat larger forces. "We propose a trade agreement," Sarah continued diplomatically, her words flowing in one channel while her tactical commands flowed through another. "Access to our combined technological achievements in exchange for defined borders and mutual defense pacts." The Kreshkar commander's patterns shifted rapidly, their equivalent of laughter. "You offer what you cannot enforce. Our scans show your defensive positions are weak, scattered." "Are they?" Sarah's fingers danced across the tactical interface. The seemingly disparate fleet units suddenly began moving in perfect coordination, forming an interlocking defense grid that caught the Kreshkar fleet in a three-dimensional web of overlapping fields of fire. Valera and Selra exchanged glances as they watched Sarah operate both interfaces with fluid precision. She wasn't just handling them separately, she was making them work together, using the diplomatic channel to distract from her tactical movements, and using fleet positions to strengthen her negotiating stance. "Impressive," the Kreshkar commander admitted, their patterns shifting to show what Sarah had learned was respect. But positioning ships is one thing. Maintaining complex negotiations while actually engaging in combat is quite another. "Would you like to test that theory?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying a steel edge that made the twins' eyes widen. The commander's patterns swirled faster. "Perhaps. A small demonstration. To prove your worth as negotiating partners." Without warning, 3 Kreshkar vessels broke formation, accelerating toward the defense grid. Sara's hands moved before the action was even complete, defensive units shifting to intercept while she simultaneously drafted treaty points that would define acceptable combat parameters. Article 1. She spoke clearly into the diplomatic channel while her fingers directed precise defensive maneuvers. Any military action taken during negotiations will be considered a formal response to the proposed terms. The Kreshkar ships fired, their energy weapons lighting up space. Sara's position defenders absorbed the attack while executing a complex maneuver that left the attackers exposed to counterfire. Article 2. She continued without missing a beat. The demonstrated combat capabilities of all parties will be considered binding evidence of their ability to enforce diplomatic agreements. The Kreshkar commander's patterns had become almost still, a sign of intense focus. You handle war and words together as naturally as the Zixri themselves. Humanity has learned that they're often two sides of the same coin, Sara responded, maintaining her concentration on both interfaces. The art of war and the art of peace require the same fundamental skills: understanding your opponent, anticipating their moves, and knowing when to hold firm or show flexibility. The commander was silent for a long moment, their patterns shifting through complex geometries. Finally, they spoke. Perhaps we've been too hasty in our approach to this sector. We're happy to discuss alternative approaches, Sara offered, though she didn't relax her tactical positioning. Provided they begin with a withdrawal to a mutually agreed-upon distance. As the Kreshkar fleet began a slow retreat to the proposed coordinates, Sara felt rather than saw the twins move closer. In all our years, Valro whispered, we've never seen anyone turn a Kreshkar probe into a diplomatic opportunity. While simultaneously outmaneuvering their tactical forces, Selva added with what sounded like respect. But Sara kept her focus sharp. Something in the Kreshkar commander's final patterns had triggered a warning in her mind. This had been too easy, too clean. As she maintained the diplomatic connection and watched the tactical displays, she began to see it. Subtle shifts in the retreating fleet's formation that suggested this was far from over. The real test was just beginning. The truth revealed. Sara's instincts proved correct. As the Kreshkar fleet withdrew to the negotiated coordinates, her tactical display lit up with new energy signatures, smaller ships, virtually invisible to standard sensors, breaking away from the main fleet. They're probing our blind spots, Selva observed, her armor shifting colors in response to heightened alert status. While the commander speaks of peace, Valra added, watching the diplomatic feed where the Kreshkar leader continued to discuss trade terms. Sara didn't break her concentration on either interface. They're not just probing, she said quietly. They're looking for something specific. The question is what? The answer came in a burst of encrypted data that flashed across both interfaces simultaneously. In that moment, Sara understood why the twins had designed their test this way. The diplomatic and tactical channels weren't separate challenges, they were two halves of a hidden message. Your defense grid, the Kreshkar commander's patterns, shifted to what Sara now recognized as smugness. It generates interesting harmonic frequencies, almost like it's designed to resonate with something. The twins went absolutely still. Sara's mind raced, processing tactical movements and diplomatic subtext simultaneously. The Kreshkar weren't here for territory or resources. They were hunting for something hidden in the very structure of Zixrian space itself. The crystal cities, Sara said softly. They're not just buildings, are they? Clever human, Valro whispered. Too clever, Selva added, her hand moving to a weapon at her side. But Sara was already moving, her fingers flying across both interfaces. On the tactical display, she began shifting the defense grid into a new configuration. In the diplomatic channel, she started speaking in carefully measured tones. Commander, you're right about the harmonics, but you're looking at them wrong. Her tactical movements created a complex pattern of overlapping fields. Our defense grid doesn't just protect space, it protects time. The Kreshkar commander's patterns froze. Impossible. The Zixri couldn't have built their entire civilization as a temporal shield. Sarah completed the thought. Look at your own scans. Why do you think everything here comes in pairs? As she spoke, the true nature of Zixria Prime revealed itself. The crystal cities weren't just reflecting light, they were reflecting moments in time, creating a stable bubble in an unstable universe. The twins weren't just rulers, they were living anchors, maintaining the balance between what was and what could be. The Kreshkar didn't come here for conquest, Sarah announced, looking at the twins. They came looking for a way to save their own civilization from temporal collapse. That's what this test was really about, finding species who could help maintain the shield. Valera and Selra moved in perfect synchronization, their forms briefly overlapping in a way that seemed to bend reality itself. For 10,000 years, they spoke as one. We have stood guard against the entropy that threatens to unravel spacetime itself. But we grow tired, Valera said. We need allies who can see both the pattern and its purpose, Seldra finished. On the tactical display, the hidden Kreshkar ships had stopped their probing maneuvers. Their commander's patterns had shifted to something Sarah had never seen before, hope. You understand now, the commander said, why we had to know if you were capable. A single mistake in maintaining the temporal shield could cascade across every moment in time, Sarah completed. That's why everything has to be handled simultaneously. The diplomatic balance maintains the social structure, while the tactical grid maintains the physical one. The twins approached Sarah, their movements creating ripples in what she now recognized as the fabric of spacetime itself. And now you face a choice, Captain Chen of Earth, they said in unison. What will you do with this knowledge? Sarah looked at the interfaces before her, seeing them not as tools of test or warfare, but as the controls of something far more crucial, the machinery that kept reality itself from unraveling. I choose, she said firmly, to do what humans have always done when faced with impossible challenges. Her hands moved across both interfaces with renewed purpose. Adapt, innovate, and find a way to make the impossible possible. As the twin suns of Zixria Prime reached their zenith, casting double shadows across the crystal city, Sarah began to implement her plan, one that would either cement humanity's place among the guardians of time itself or tear the very fabric of reality apart. Dual victory. The crystalline chamber hummed with temporal energy as Sarah initiated her plan. On the diplomatic interface, she began composing a message that would reshape the future of 3 civilizations. On the tactical display, she started reconfiguring the defense grid into something never before attempted. What are you doing? Valra asked, her form shimming with concern. Your shield design, Sarah explained, fingers dancing across both interfaces. It's based on duality. 2 suns, 2 rulers, 2 aspects of reality held in perfect balance. But what if we added a third perspective? Impossible. The Kreshkar commander's patterns swirled with alarm. The temporal mathematics are based on binary systems, Sarah completed. But Earth's quantum computers don't work in binaries. We learn to compute in superpositions. Selra's armor shifted colors rapidly. You propose to create a triadic shield, Sarah confirmed. Earth's quantum technology, Zixtrian temporal engineering, and Kreshkar energy manipulation, all working in harmony. The chamber's crystalline walls began to pulse with new frequencies as Sarah's changes rippled through the system. On the tactical display, she was repositioning the combined fleets into a complex 3-dimensional pattern that mirrored the mathematical structure of her proposed shield. The strain on the system will be enormous, Valra warned. Then it's fortunate, Sarah replied, her concentration absolute, that humans work best under pressure. Through the diplomatic channel, she began coordinating the most complex negotiation of her career, a 3-way alliance that would distribute the burden of maintaining reality itself. Her words flowed in perfect synchronization with her tactical movements, each reinforcing the other. The Zixri provide the foundation, she explained, as ships moved into position. Their crystal cities anchor the shield in space-time. The Kreshkar energy matrices, she continued, watching as their fleet aligned with her calculations, provide the power to maintain it. And Earth? What can Earth provide? The Kreshkar commander demanded, their patterns showing both doubt and desperate hope. Sarah smiled, activating the quantum protocols she had been quietly uploading from the Artemis. We provide the perspective that makes it all work together. The chamber filled with light as three technologies, never meant to interact, began to synchronize under her guidance. The tactical display showed the combined fleets moving in perfect harmony, creating geometric patterns that seemed to fold space itself. Through the diplomatic channel, she wove together an agreement that bound three species in mutual protection and support. Impossible, Selra whispered, watching as new colors bloomed in the temporal shield. Improbable, Sarah corrected, her fingers never stopping their dance across the interfaces. There's a difference. The Kreshkar commander's patterns had become almost hypnotic as they watched the new shield taking shape. In all our calculations we never considered. That's the problem with dual systems, Sarah said, making final adjustments. They can only see two possibilities at once. But reality isn't binary, it's infinite. The chamber shuddered as the new shield locked into place. On every display, readings showed temporal stability increasing beyond anything previously recorded. The crystal cities sang with new frequencies, their harmonics now incorporating three-phase resonances that strengthened rather than strained the fabric of space-time. Valera and Selra moved to stand on either side of Sarah, their forms seeming to blur at the edges as reality adjusted to its new configuration. You haven't just passed our test, they spoke in unison. You've transformed it. That's what humans do, Sarah replied, finally allowing herself to relax slightly. We see problems not as barriers, but as opportunities for evolution. The Kreshkar commander's patterns settled into a configuration that Sarah now recognized as profound respect. Perhaps, they said, it is we who have been tested today. As the three civilizations began working out the details of that unprecedented alliance, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of handling duality, but of transcending it, of finding new ways to approach seemingly impossible challenges. The twin suns of Zixria Prime set on a changed galaxy. In the High Council chamber, representatives of three species began the work of implementing Sarah's vision. The temporal shield, now stronger than ever, hummed with the combined energy of their cooperation. Sarah stood at a viewport, watching the stars shine more brightly through the strengthened shield. Sometimes she mused, the best way to handle two tasks isn't to master them separately, but to find the way they were meant to work together all along. The twins joined her, their forms casting double shadows that now seemed to hint at infinite possibilities rather than just duality. And what task, they asked, will humanity set for itself next? Sarah smiled, her mind already racing with new possibilities. That, she said, is the most exciting question of all. End.